reason that they are designed to trip, can you talk about that? What does that prevent?
It's overcurrent protection. Whenever there is a ground fault or an overcurrent, otherwise you put too much load on each circuit. Once that amperage is met, then the breaker is designed to kick itself off before it does damage to your wiring or devices.
And from an older home, I know you have some examples here.
Yeah.
People that may have homes.
Yes. These are fuses. If your house was built most likely before 1980, you're likely to have a fuse panel. And the fuse panel works exactly like a breaker as an overcurrent device. The only difference is that once this fuse has met its overcurrent potential and falls, it's a one-time deal. It's gone. It's out, and you have to replace it, whereas you can reset a breaker. Another big difference is ground fault circuit interrupter breakers and arc fault breakers you can install in a breaker panel, not in a fuse panel.
And what can you kind of boil those two things down? The arc fault and the ground fault. What types of situations are those meant to protect you from?
Okay, a ground fault circuit interrupter is designed to protect you against electrical shock in places of wet locations, like around sinks and bathrooms, in your garage, outside your house. Okay, and it protects that issue. Arc fault breaker senses low level frequency arcs before you see them. That way, if you have one before it becomes a problem, it will de-energize your circuit.
So if you have a wire inside your wall and something's chewing on it or something, and it's exposed and it's arcs.
Absolutely. What causes an arc is a gap between a connection. Okay, so electrical work cools and heats as you use it. Well, as it cools and it heats, it extracts and contracts and expands. And if it gets away from a connection, a loose connection, it can arc. Well, an arc fault circuit interrupter sees that arc before you can see it, and it de-energizes the circuit.
Wow. And then, can I get a close-up of you holding the fuses too?
Do you think it would be prudent to explain in layman's terms what could cause a breaker to trip? You know, I mean, the technical version you gave is 100% accurate, but you know, I think people might want to hear if you plug too many things into an outlet, or if a cord is damaged, or things like that would make a breaker trip.
Yeah, I'd love to get some examples.
Two hair dryers going in the bathroom.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
it.
there you go. Perfect. Yeah. Perfect example.
You want to say that first? Or?
I zoomed in on it while we were doing it.
Okay.
It's all good. What might be happening if your breaker's tripping? What can cause these things?
Okay, there's a few things that can cause it. Overcurrent, space heaters, too many extension cords, Christmas tree lights, two hair dryers going on at once, your microwave and additional equipment being on the same circuit and going at the same time. Also things like squirrels chewing in the attic. If you have aluminum wiring in your house versus copper devices, when dissimilar metals are connected together and you apply heat to them, they contract away from each other. So if you don't have a compound on your aluminum wiring and you have a copper device, then they can extract away from each other. And that causes a ton of fires. A ton of fires.
Is there a guideline for when aluminum, I mean, was that used before, or does it just depend on?
Well, during the housing boom, aluminum is cheaper. During the housing boom of the 60s and the 70s, a lot of aluminum wiring got placed into apartments and housing, but cheaper devices copper devices are cheaper. So when you put aluminum wire on copper devices, if you don't apply a compound called no-lox to them, then they expand away from each other once they're heated. So when they expand away from each other, that causes the wiring to loosen, causing arcing, thus fires. And
so I guess for people, what would be the situation where what would be a copper thing you're connecting to? In other words,
the device, the actual receptacle will be a copper receptacle.
Coming off of whatever, the plug.
And the wiring, aluminum wiring. So once you put aluminum wire under a copper receptacle, it's got to be rated for copper and aluminum, that receptacle does. before they were just copper, aluminum wiring. Once they were tied together, they expanded away from each other once they were put into use. And that takes a long time. It takes years for that to happen. But over the years, that expanding and contracting away from each other causes an arc gap.
The receptacle, we're talking about like an outlet. Like
Yes.
The physical box, the outlet itself. is
Absolutely. Receptacle, plug,
So it can
switch. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So yeah, you replace the switch and you don't realize you have this aluminum wiring.
You'll know it when you see it. If you pull a device off and your wiring is very easy to bend and it's silver in color, it's aluminum wiring. Okay. If it is dark or brass looking, it'll be copper and it'll be a lot stiffer and harder.
And so from the standpoint of, shortcuts that can really get you in a lot of trouble, I don't know of any with a breaker box, but with the fuse box, I know sometimes people, if they don't want to pay for fuses, they may try to short it, put a penny in. What is that basically?
If you put anything other than the recommended fuse or breaker on your wire, each wire size has a designed amperage and a designed overcurrent protection device. If you put anything other than that design in it, you're taking away all the protection from the circuit. So if you upsize the breaker, for instance, if you have a breaker that continues to trip and you just pull that breaker off and put one bigger than it, you're pulling the protection for your circuitry off. So that if that amperage goes up above the protection of the wiring, but below the amount of protection you have on your breaker, then you can start a fire. If you put a penny in a fuse, you're taking total overcurrent protection out of the picture. And if the amperage raises above the requirement for that conductor, then you're going to induce a fire.
And so in terms of okay, your washer and dryer, they have a different plug. You can't plug it into your kitchen outlets. But some things you have to really read the label on. My understanding is, for instance, the space heaters may have just a regular, 3-prong plug, but they're going to pull more electricity than, or amps, or however you want to describe it. Basically, they require a different current or amp than a lamp, something like that. I mean, is that something to watch out? Are there rules to kind of go by, in your bedroom? Is it probably going to have something that might be set for? I mean, our house is built with that in mind.
Yeah, there's a national electrical code that governs how electrical systems are put in place. You can only trust the installation if it's installed by someone who is a state licensed electrical contractor and a state licensed electrical journeyman. Outside of that, you're playing with fire.
And you've got an example of a card to
Absolutely.
that up. If you want to find out is somebody licensed by the state, that's good right there. And talk a little about why that's important too.
Well, licensing is important because of the trust factor. A lot of people operate out of the trunks of their cars, and anybody with a pair of side cutters thinks they're an electrician, but there's a standard in the state of Alabama for electrical journeymen and for electrical contractors that are based off code principles. And you can only trust your electrician if he's been evaluated through a code test. How else is he supposed to know how many receptacles he can put on a circuit, what type of receptacles he can put on a circuit, what types he can put in certain applications, unless he's been tested by an independent agency, Alabama Electrical Contractors Board. And you can go online, and they have a list of contractors and electricians that have passed their test. You can ask to see this license. You can call the Bejatc for a list of electrical contractors that are state licensed, or you can go online and look.
And in terms of just, and I just want to kind of change locations, we can just this whole room is electrical-ish, so.
Yeah,
all of this stuff-
a lot of it you